Good afternoon. Welcome to the Tuesday afternoon meeting of the BOCC. 3 items on the agenda today. We have a discussion on the Planning Commission. We have Public Works, and then Emily, I'm going to move the assessor right up front because I think this is pretty straightforward and we can get this done so you don't have to sit here through the whole thing. You good with that? What we have is an agreement, and I know you've talked to us about this before. Maybe just give us a brief deal on it.
This is just a contract with a new attorney. We talked about it in executive session about current litigation. So this is just the contract we talked about previously.
Okay. So all we need here is a motion and approval, and you're set to go.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the new agreement as has been presented by the assessor.
Okay. Motion on the floor. Any questions? I don't see any hands.
Emily, it says that the lawyer is it works for Forrest Garvey,
I think it's Foster Garden.
Foster Garvey. Yes, that's right. Is that a firm that you've used in the past for these
I haven't,
special cases?
The county has used the firm before and they were vetted through the PA's office as there'll be a special deputy attorney, so.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
I'm amazed at the rate.
You think that? Yeah. Okay, seeing no hands, I would call for a vote. Those in favor
Aye.
also vote aye. Motion passes.
Thank
Okay.
you.
The other items we had, I brought up a while ago, some thoughts on changes in the planning commission, and I talked about it was it last week at BPAC, a week before, something like that. So I'm bringing it up to a workshop, and I want to preference it because I don't have any. I think when I talked about it in BPAC, one of the planning commission folks were there, and it sounded like she felt like I was attacking her, and so I want to preface this. I've never really spent any time with any people on that commission. I think they're all fine. I don't have anything against any of them. I just, in the period of time that I've sit and watched it operate, I've just identified where I think we can be more efficient with that. And so that's where this request comes from. And it's really, there's 2 parts to it. One, I think is fairly easy. I don't even know if it takes code change. Our attorneys would be the final deal of that. But right now, BPAC does the planning stuff. Obviously, they look at developments and they do all that, which is proper role. They also look at all what I consider legislative type things, ordinance changes, policy changes, and then recommend to us. And what I'm suggesting is that we reverse that those type of things come to the BOCC. I believe a lot of them can be handled fairly quickly. And we can move that process along. It seems to me we've spent 7 months on one that if it would have came our way, we're wasting staff time. They're spending 7 months trying to work through a policy with the planning commission, and then it comes to us, and if we have issues with it, then they're working on it some more. And it just seems, my colleague calls it latency issue. I call it an efficiency issue. And I think we can improve on that. So I'd like to see the legislative type issues, the ordinance changes, policy changes, make their way to the BOCC. We still retain the right to, if we get into it and we say, hey, this has some issues that we think need to be hammered more, they can be referred back to the planning commission. It doesn't take them totally out of the loop. It just changes the loop that if it's pretty straightforward. We can get it done. We meet weekly. They meet monthly. We can get some of that hammered out. So that's number one. The second part is, in 1961, when this was formed, it was formed with 9 commissioners. And as I said at BPAC, I get it. We didn't have computers back then. Everything was probably paper. There were probably drawers of documents and things were laid out on tables. I get all that. These days, things are more efficient. You have access to a lot of things electronically. So I'm suggesting that, and we are at 7 commissioners at this point in time. We've had a District 1 resign and a District 2 resign. So I'd like to see us go to 7, 2 from each district, and in one position be appointed by the BOCC. It can be a department head, probably the natural choices department head over building and planning, but it doesn't have to be. It can be a department head within the county. And I believe that leads to some efficiency issues too, because over the months, what I've seen, there's kind of a information disconnect between items that we may work on and items that they're working on. And I just think if you have that link, that if that is noticed, that some of that can be corrected and some of it can be worked on so there isn't such a disconnect. I just think it would speed the process along. So what that would look like is if we did that, we've already had 1 resignation from District 1. We've had a resignation from District 2, so there's no adjustments there. In January, a District 3 position comes up, and that position would be replaced with a department head, and we'd be at our 7. So that's my suggestions and open for comment. And the feedback I've had from the people in the building industry that I've chatted to have been fairly positive about speeding things up a little bit.
You said there were 3 things,
No, those were the 2.
just 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Those are the 2 items I thought we could adjust a little bit and make that process work a little better for the public and actually for staff. I see them working 2 sides and doing different things on 2 different sides, and it just seems like a waste to me.
Well, one of the most important and difficult tasks we have ultimately is ascertaining the limits that we place on private property uses. That's always a constant balancing act and a juggling act. And because we want to maximize people's property rights to the greatest extent possible, but your rights end when you take somebody else's away. I think we all get that. But you also used the word efficiency, which does raise a red flag, because efficiency means you quickly make a decision without, and when we're dealing with property rights, I think we have to be very careful about being too efficient. Because then you trample on people's rights. We have to have full opportunity to review. So I think the virtue of a process that has plenty of folks in the role of reviewing these battles between different conflicting rights is not a bad thing. I do agree with you that the way it's been developed, it seems to take forever to get anything done. And so somewhere we have to reach the right kind of balance. There's the other little saying that justice delayed is justice denied. If you're trying to come up with a just allocation of rights, not making a decision really restricts some people. we have the Building and Planning Advisory Committee, which is pretty much designed to allow those in the industry to have an impact, which I think is appropriate. They're the ones that are most directly affected by the rules and regulations that the department tries to take out or to enforce. The Planning Commission, though, is supposed to be our eyes and ears out in the neighborhood. We're only three. And in some of these really critical issues of what kind of neighbors do you get to have, or what kind of controls do you have on your neighbors? I get a little nervous when you cut it back. And I'm not sure that having 9 commissioners is what's causing the inefficiencies. I think the inefficiencies of processing requests comes elsewhere. And sometimes that's a matter of management in a department. And we've certainly had a turnover and a challenge getting the right folks in, and having past practices that act as a stifle to initiative to bringing about some creative changes. I just don't want to be so efficient that we're moving too quickly in this balancing act between competing interests. So, and I appreciate the fact that you're looking at the situation with a different set of experiences, which is absolutely, it's absolutely important. I just want to be very careful that we don't trample on property rights. And,
Well,
we got to do things better, though. I agree with you on that. Absolutely. There needs to be less time taken for making the decisions, but
I would love to see it move from a snail's pace to at least a turtle's pace. I'm not asking for leapfrogs here, and I can always send it back if I don't understand something, but I'm fully capable of reading something and understanding it and making an informed decision, and we're the ones that make it in the end anyways. And I would have to ask them how many property rights they've taken away over 30 years that some of them have been sitting on that committee. I think we're the face of the public, and I just think this is where the buck stops, and I'm not afraid to put on my big boy pants and make a decision. And of course, it's at the pleasure of this board where we go, but that's where I would go.
Yeah, there are some definitions are important, and I think property rights is actually a bit hard to define in an absolute sense, because we're not isolated ourselves. The other term is efficiency has to be defined. It's just not taking more time or taking less time. It's just doing things such that as you do a hindsight view, you look back and said, I got this job done in 3 days when it previously took me 8 days. Well, at least there, what you've nailed down is the starting point and a defined endpoint. I was happy with the endpoint, but it took me much less time. That would be that'd be efficient. Or it took me a fewer dollars, less employee time. So I'm going to go at it at slightly different route there. The difference between 9 and 7 is something I'm happy with there. What Bennett said is applicable if we understood the makeup of each of the people on the board, so that there would not be any overlap, any oversight. I don't mean oversight to look at it, but we just looked over, we didn't get everything. And so, and then fully knowing and having observed them, I don't think we lose anything. I think we actually pick up an opportunity to have a little more discussion if there are fewer people. So the other one, the first one, I actually think it would help us if, Mr. Chairman, you took an example of one, a contrived example, you know, taking us through where the board works on it, and then another one where the board just says, oh, that goes to the planning commission. Because I'm a little hazy there.
Okay. Well, I can give you one of each. We had them sit in and we eventually made the decision on it when they wanted a zoning change. We had, remember the builder came in, zoning change out on Carlin Loop.
Mhm.
That was appropriate to go to planning commission beforehand because they're the ones that keep track of all that kind of stuff. And then it came to us with a recommendation for a zoning change. I wouldn't change that route, even though we're the final ones that make the decision. That's okay. I wouldn't change that route. We have a hearing coming up on the 21st on the floodplain. And this was started in May, if I remember right. And it was brought to us and it was said, FEMA guidelines for this or this. And this is what the national guidelines are. Cowlitz County has had an overlay above that of this. Where do you want to be? And our talk was, well, we'll be on FEMA guidelines. We decided FEMA guidelines would be it. If a person wants to do something different, they can make that decision themselves, or a builder wants to do something different, they can make that decision themselves, but we weren't going to impose things beyond. I mean, in my mind, there's enough rules already. I'm not going to impose additional stuff. So I went to planning commission and they insisted and passed out after 7 months of discussing it. This is one of the things, they only meet on a monthly basis. We sit on a weekly basis, that they wanted to maintain the 3 foot above in the 100-year floodplain for the safety. Well, I have a real issue when you're defining somebody's safety because everybody else is paying for the few that maybe don't make the right decision or maybe get caught in a decision that didn't work for them, and everybody pays for their safety. I'm not in the business. I'm not willing to take away rights for just for somebody's safety. I'm not talking about illegal stuff, but I'm talking about, you notice everyday decision making. Oh, well, that person doesn't have the ability to make this decision, so everybody needs to abide by this. It's not the way I work. I'm not going to take somebody's rights because somebody has trouble making a decision. And so that type of thing, I thought should have came to us. We were within all the guidelines we had. There wasn't any other guidelines we needed. We knew what the federal guidelines were. We know what the state guidelines are on all the building. If we want to go above the guidelines, we can make that decision. We know from testimony that we don't have to adopt the state guidelines, but we have to enforce them. So it's pretty clear to me where we stand, and I can make that decision. I can look at that and make a logical decision and move.
Yeah. Excuse me. So, how the inception of each of these. So in the first case, that would be originating from the planning commission.
No, it comes actually, I think it started, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think these things come through building and planning and they make a decision where it goes.
Okay, so they would have the burden here to decide whether to
Right.
come to us or to planning commission.
Right.
Now, let's say they came to us, well, let me back up. In the first case, then, they are talking about a changing of the zoning, if you will. So they would go to the planning commission. The planning commission would do its work, come to us, just like before.
Just like before.
In the other case, in case 2, that's one where the customer would come to us first, the board, or go to building and planning? Who would advise us that there's an issue on the table?
Does that usually start with somebody requesting to us? And then we refer it to you?
It would be based on application coming in, or if the board directed our department to revamp a code or a policy decision or administrative determination, then it would come to our department and we would move that path forward.
So in the case where it require, like even a short plat, would that come before us or,
That's
Any-
done within our department.
and then a long plat?
Large lot comes, same with our department, but if it's a rural or
So
a
Tracy,
urban
when you say it
subdivision,
starts with your department, that is because at some point in the past, the Board of Commissioners have said, you've got that administrative, yes, take care of those administrative issues. That's more administrative than we want to deal with.
Mhm.
And then you decide whether to kick it up to the planning commission or handle it yourself.
Depends on the path forward. Yeah, what's in our code.
Now, how do you see if, like we recently have been contacted or involved with developments of multiple dwellings and traffic issue is always an issue and ancillary stuff I had counted on the planning commission advising us on stuff and I wished it were a little clearer, but so if I'm filing for a large lot, do you go to the planning commission for that?
Large lots are 5 acres or more. Those are done administratively through our
Okay,
department.
which, pick one where.
The Silver Lake one, that's a good example. That would come to the board. It's a housing development, so it would go to planning commission and then to the board.
And that would not change under,
That wouldn't change.
Okay. and if I'm in the Silver Lake, the developer, how do I know that? Because I'm gonna start with you, right?
Correct.
Okay, so the burden for some decision making is gonna be in your hands.
Mhm.
This would be difficult to put a definitive ordinance together, I think. Because we'd have to define cases and I wouldn't know how to define them.
Frankly, it's all very well defined by ordinance currently. I'm sorry, it's all currently defined by ordinance. It's all mandated by code as it is today. So for example, the planning commission hears subdivisions. Subdivisions are 5 or more lots, any one of which is less than 5 acres.
Yeah.
Short plats are administrative, they're up to 4 lots. Large lots, because they're between 5 and 10 acres, they're exempt from RCW 5817. The county's elected to pass a large lot ordinance, but it's an administrative code. And so they stay at the administrative level. Any subdivision, urban or rural, meaning 5 or more lots, any one of which is less than 5 acres in area, goes before the planning commission and then to the board.
Yeah.
So you would say everything else other than what you just described goes to the board?
So-
That's a good description what you just gave.
So subdivisions go to the planning commission, any legislative action such as a proposed change in ordinance, a new ordinance, comprehensive plan amendments, that all goes to the planning commission and then to the board. Things such as variance, special use, campground binding site plan, those would go to the hearing examiner. And then we have a third.
Do we
tier.
go where?
I'm sorry? To the hearing examiner.
Oh,
And
Okay.
so, and then we have the third tier of administrative processes, which stay within the department. They don't go to either board or commission.
So you've heard the chairman and some of us have kind of muttered along that the process seems to take too long, particularly when we're dealing with the big codes, the comprehensive reviews and those ordinances. What would you all suggest we do differently
So
to
with the,
speed up the process? Because you're dealing with the clients
right.
that are bogged down waiting for the changes to be official.
So with the specific example regarding the floodplain, that does have some back history on it, and it largely has to do with DOE was involved. And we were working closely with DOE, so that ordinance, would-
Ecology or
yes,
energy?
Department of Ecology.
Ecology.
And so we were trying to satisfy their requirements with respect to the state's model ordinance. The 2 and 3 feet respectively between the Toutle and Cowlitz and all other water bodies, that was just a carryover from the old ordinance, and it left it in place. When I found that, I brought it to the attention of the Planning Commission, and what had happened was they wanted more information. And so there were a series of continuances where they sent us back, they directed staff to go get additional information on the number of properties that have affected, why it's there, the impact of it being removed or reduced to the federal standard of 1 foot, as well as both the Army Corps and FEMA expressed that they had data available justifying those numbers. Those numbers never came forward. All agencies involved have acknowledged that 1 foot is the mandate, so we're perfectly within our within the board's purview to make it 1 foot if that's the desire of the board. So that's been settled. But it was a long convoluted process. With respect to making the Planning Commission more efficient, they've expressed a strong desire to workshop items in a outside of the formal public hearing process, so a public meeting to invite comment, get additional information, so that way when we do take it to the formal public hearing, that they're well versed and they know what the issues are, and then they accept the testimony through the open record process. Excuse me. And because they only meet once a month, that adds an additional month to any given process. In addition to that, if they seek additional information, that sends it out another month. And so what should take a single hearing, a single open record public hearing, can get stretched into 2-3 meetings very easily in front of the Planning Commission before the board ever hears it. And so that's, if we can curtail that, and in my mind, the best way to do that is staff needs to be prepared when they present an application to the Planning Commission and give them specific direction. Because at the conclusion of the Planning Commission, there's a couple of different options. They can recommend denial, they can recommend approval, they can take no action. Staff can then take that to the board in any form. And so we can present it to the board and say, Planning Commission didn't provide a recommendation, they recommend denial. Staff can also provide a recommendation to the board contrary to the Planning Commission recommendation. So again, back to the floodplain example, the Planning Commission has recommended the 2 and 3 feet. Staff can provide an alternate recommendation outside of the Planning Commission, say staff's recommending 1 foot for these reasons. And then the board would then decide what to do, and they would adopt their own findings justifying their decision. So we have quite a bit of discretion in working with the Planning Commission. We just need to be more direct within our department, and I believe we have that direction now to guide the Planning Commission and to keep them on track. And that hasn't occurred in the past.
So do you think if you briefed that to us that I wouldn't be able to understand it?
You absolutely would, but that's just been the mode up
We,
to
we,
this
we've
year.
morphed into this process that
Right.
we've done for years.
Exactly.
And I've read the code.
Yep.
It says we may send stuff to the Planning Commission outside of the plats and stuff.
That's correct.
So it doesn't have to go that way. I'm trying to unmorph some of this years and years of, because we've always done it that way. I mean, I've looked at these kind of things for 40 years, sitting in my industry, and
It
I-
really doesn't take a monumental shift in current code. It's just a shift in policy and direction. And we
that's the
can get
way I
there.
read it. It's not a code thing, other than maybe the makeup of the commission from 7, because that's written in the code, but the other is just a policy, how you want to do it.
Correct.
So at some point in time, we'll have a discussion on the flood management change.
The floodplain ordinance is coming in front of you on November 21st.
Okay.
It would have been next Tuesday, but there's no quorum. So it's the November 21st, and the flood hazard mitigation plan excuse me, the work group is getting back together on November 15th to try to take out those chapters that reference climate change and to streamline some of those sections before it gets brought back. So that's where that one is sitting right now, the one that's been tabled on your agenda.
But the one about raising the minimum
The minimum flood, the base flood elevation is coming to you on November 21st.
and that would, the national guideline is 1 foot.
Correct.
And
And
the-
that's what our staff recommendation will be
and-
in the
and
staff report.
the previous standard was 3 feet,
3 foot, 2 foot.
3 feet for the.
and that
California
change, and that change happened when?
About-
After the eruption, I believe.
Yeah.
After the eruption? Yeah. Okay, so going back to the way it was before the eruption is what you're
Correct.
desiring to do.
Based on current information we have and FEMA guidance, yes.
Just keep in mind, the scientific research we've heard through the collaborative is that the Toutle is second only to the Amazon in the amount of sediment sent out into the larger body of water. I'm suggesting maybe we're not through with the eruption consequences yet, but I guess that's for a different discussion. It's one of those interesting situations where week in and week out, we are very much aware of the federal rules and regulations that come down our way. And I have to say that here's a situation where, yeah, the federal regulation doesn't care one whit about volcanoes because the rest of the country doesn't have it. Here's a situation where we need to pay attention to our own local needs. And so that'll be a push. I mean, that'll be a difficult issue because we know very much the amount of stuff that continues to come down that river is probably makes it not very timely that we say, oh, we don't care. We'll go back to the way, we'll pretend we can go back to the way it was before the eruption. And I'm just not, 90 or 85% of the people that I represent live protected behind dikes. So I guess that's why I'm a little bit more sensitive about flood capacity.
I had a cogent thing to add, but trying to follow you carefully, I largely evanesced. I am comfortable with adopting both of the chairman's suggestions as to the difference between 1 feet and 3 feet. I sat in on one of the planning commission meetings and there was this big discussion about the floodplain map. And that left me pretty much uncomfortable because that's just a map that will change tomorrow and I'm going to build my house here today. So I don't think there's anything you can sink your teeth in there. But the issue now I'm recalling, what goes before the planning commission should not be a policy decision. And when I hear all this, the distillation is, I think we should zealously guard a policy from this board. The public can unelect us anytime they want, well, at election time. And so it then becomes a philosophic distinction. And this 1 foot and 3 foot thing is a perfect example. And we will face that decision on November 21st. But for here, it serves as a very good illustration of the point of distinction I was trying to find between the approaches. I'm happy with your suggestion. I don't know if you need a motion. You will need the ordinance change on the number of.
You want to work with the attorneys and see what needs to be changed?
Of course.
It'd probably be wise to review anything they say.
Doug knew this discussion was
Yeah.
in the works. I let him know where you were kind of heading. And so we will work with him and see what we need to bring forward to the board to change. It's probably not something that happens overnight because
No.
I think one of them's a code change, but We'll still have to advertise it and take it to public meeting or public hearing, but yep. And then in the meantime, the 2 open positions, do we want to leave open until the code change happens and then,
That'd be my preference.
Okay.
But
we'll work with legal.
okay.
Thank you.
I heard Public Works. Appreciate your help yesterday.
You're welcome. Mike Moss, Public Services Director. We're gonna start off with a miscellaneous item of a contract. Actually, let me get my glasses on here. Amendment number 1 is with Foster Garvey. I believe it's very similar to what Emily was working here with the assessor's office with you guys. The very first item you had today at 1:30. Sean just passed out the amendment to you guys. Foster Garvey is our attorneys we work with for the landfill. And our current contract ended on September 30th of this year. Working with the PA's office, this came from Doug Jensen to extend the agreement to October 31st, 2026. You can see there's no dollar amounts on here. There's no rates. It's an as-needed contract. It's just extending their initial contract with the county. Certain years we use them a lot. Certain years we don't use them much at all. This past year, just so you know, up to date for 2023, we've used them a little bit over $9,000, but we expect to use them quite a bit here coming up with hopefully a PUD contract and other landfill MSW
Oh,
contracts.
yeah,
So
yeah.
they look through those for us. We use the 2 attorneys we use most through Foster Garvey is Steve DiGiulio and Jay Donovan. So those are,
So this is an extension and you're not asking for rate increases?
no,
by
the
old
rate's not on
contract?
there because per year they may increase their rates. Right now,
Oh,
Steve DiGiulio is
gotcha.
at $750 an hour and Jay Donovan's at $495 is our current rate.
But last year we only used $9,000 worth of their services?
Yeah, this year up to currently for 2023, $9,700. Last year was about $51,000. So Doug asked me to bring this forward to you guys today, asked it for the chairman to sign since there's only 1 spot for signature. If you guys are agreeable to that, then we'll put it on the consent agenda for November 21st.
The gentleman here is the same one as on the other agreement.
The one that Emily gave us,
Yeah,
exactly the same name, signing it. Kenneth.
you're still gonna be with Jay or Steve, right?
Correct, yes. Yep.
So we're paying these fees because we're going with the really well-established experts.
Exactly right, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
and that,
Different attorneys than that, I believe that the assessor's office is using. Yeah, we're still with Jay and Steve at Foster Garvey.
Well, attorneys kind of specialize, don't they?
Very much so.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Great, thank you. I'm going to turn it over to staff to continue the workshop we started a few weeks ago on the 5-year facility plan, maintenance facility plan. I think Sean also gave you a copy of this. It has Plan A, Plan B, and Plan C. So this is a plan that we talked a little bit about, that the main difference in all these plans, I believe, is only item number 31, which is the HOJ HVAC repair. And we're going to let them go into discussion. I'll have Will take my spot up here. Thank you.
Okay, I've been nominated to go ahead and start. So again, this is the same, Savannah Clement, Deputy Director of Public Works. Right before you have a 5-year plan for facilities. This shouldn't be any new information on here. Everything's the same that we presented from a couple of weeks ago. I believe we also gave the board a draft actually a couple months back. What we're here to do today is workshop this yet again with the board. If they have any questions with line items specifically, any questions relating to prioritizing or costs. And then at the end, we do have a recommendation for the board. So if we can maybe answer any questions or give any feedback on any items that are on here, and then we can, if that's okay, move on with presenting our recommendation to you today. Kathy's here as well, just from a budget capacity standpoint. I think she's also eager for us to talk about this and get some board direction. So first, do you guys have any questions on any of the line items that you've reviewed regarding costs or prioritization?
I know you, this was at the facilities committee. I don't think they had any questions on it either, right?
No, it really boiled down to what direction we were going to go as far as mainly HVAC at the Hall of Justice.
Yeah.
So
This doesn't include capital improvements like adding the third floor onto the Hall of Justice or building a
does
new
not.
structure.
it does not include that, no. Not at this time.
Does it provide any public defender's office fix? Or is that,
No, it does not include that currently.
okay, or repairs to the drug court building?
No repairs to the drug court building, no. That we call that courthouse square. And I only say that because I didn't know what that was.
And we own that building,
We do own that building, yes, that's correct.
but we don't own the one at the defense.
We do not own
Public
River
defender's office.
River Suites, no. We are still working. We just did another tour last Thursday about potential space utilization at the hall. I think I saw Ian come in. We met with several elected officials that day. We had the IT director there. Of course, Ian, Ryan, Stacy, Sheriff was there to do a really good look at that space yet again, look at possible floor plans for solutions, but we have not yet come to a decision on that.
Kathy, is this what we were talking about earlier today? The floor plan, Hall of Justice? Yeah, I think it was she and I was just in her office. And it's a little bit off topic, but not completely so.
Okay.
Let me first just ask about this.
Okay,
Could you refresh my memory on Plan A, B, and C?
sure. I'll actually let Sean do that.
Commissioners, Sean Rowley, Public Works.
There you go.
The first option is us doing nothing different at the Hall of Justice. On line item 31, we're just repairing and maintaining the HVAC at current status quo. The Plan B is the same as Plan A, except on line 31. It would be us looking for a debt alternative to fund a full HVAC replacement at the Hall of Justice. Plan C would be the difference on line 31, would be the county finding revenue sources currently available to fund a HVAC replacement at the Hall of Justice.
In 25.
Yes, sir.
So B and C, the same work's being done, and it's just a different, you're just giving us two different funding mechanisms.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Correct.
So it sounded like somebody mentioned adding a floor onto the Hall of Justice.
So that's in regard to our facilities needs steering committee. That is an option that's kind of been presented by our team to that committee. No decisions have been made from the
Understand, yeah.
committee. Right, that was an alternate possibility, yes.
I hadn't heard that before. I like to bound problems. Sometimes I'll use a silly example just to say in the extreme, like the minimum wage law. Well, how do you know $20 an hour is the right answer? Maybe it should be $200 an hour. You
Mhm.
see what I mean?
Mhm.
So when I take a look at this problem, I think we have the big gorilla in the room. The Hall of Justice is not suitable for the court system. How do you fix that? Well, sounds like you've done some thinking and planning on that. I had heard that someone said that you could not put a courthouse at the mall, and that is not my understanding.
Okay, that is the feedback we did receive from the owners in our conversations with them.
A courthouse in the current mall, they will build us a courthouse, last I talked with them.
You're correct. That would be in the current space they have available, not future, as a staff, we didn't talk to them about future.
Right.
Correct.
Okay, so I mean, it's good to make that distinction because we're facing a situation now where we have somehow to make the Hall of Justice work for us or replace it.
Yes.
And let me go through that argument rather quickly. Right now, to fix the Hall of Justice, you've got to fix the second floor or add a third floor. Either way, you're going to disturb ongoing court activity, less so if you're doing the third, fourth floor or something like that. We have a problem that most buildings are built to a specification that says you can take this kind of a load. And that's an area there where I'd be really careful about adding anything. But I don't know. Do you have off the top of your head what the dollar amount is?
So yeah, so I hadn't planned on doing the facilities needs today, so I'm not 100% prepared for probably all of your questions, but I will try my best. In our last facilities needs committee meeting, we did have a spreadsheet. You have it? Okay. We probably don't have enough copies. Thank you, Kathy. Do you just want me to pass it along to
No,
you?
I just need a
Okay.
ballpark answer. Like I'm told the new courthouse ballpark answer is 140 million.
Yeah, so go ahead, Sean.
Okay.
Yeah, so if we were to look at a Hall of Justice, that's about 150,000 square foot, we would be looking at approximately $140 million in 2023 dollars. We also proposed an additional option, which was the extension of the first and second floors to the area that has the overhang from the jail in there, or a larger value than that, up to 60,000 square foot. We tried to keep them modeled at the same square footage. An additional 60,000 square feet on floors, between floors 1 and 2, that'd be 30,000 square foot per floor, would be an approximately $50 to $60 million. And once again, that's in 2023 dollars. And then we also ran a few other options, but nothing of, we can go into details at any time if you like.
I was really hoping to come to this board with a really nicely wrapped presentation on that, on all of the options presented, funding, and get feedback. So I just hope that this piecemeal, these numbers and things that we're kind of throwing out there that have been ideas that we haven't completely vetted through the group. I just hopefully that doesn't put a sour taste, to the whole process, because I think we do have a lot of good things we could be doing. Kind of full circle, bringing that back to our proposal today, is we did have to make some assumptions, especially on this HVAC for the Hall of Justice. So we had to make an assumption that we'll be there for at least the next 3 to 5 years. Again, kind of going with what you were presenting, worst case scenario. If we stay at that building for the next 10 years, what do we need to do there? And an immediate need is something we haven't talked about in depth yet, really, other than a couple weeks ago we mentioned it, but we currently have electrical panels that are not meeting any kind of safety standard in that building. I don't want to hop around too much because I understand you probably have more questions. We had to make an assumption that we'll at least be there for the next 6 months to a year. We need to identify and address that problem. And that's included also on item number 28 at the Hall of Justice. But going back to the HVAC situation, we put this in here because we are making the assumption that we'll be in that building for at least a few more years. Also to sell the building. To try to market it and sell it with the current, system from the 70s, it will be a feature that won't be super appealing to potential buyers. So those are things that we did have to make some assumptions on. And I understand it is a lot of money, specifically for HVAC.
We're spending close to $1 million just in maintenance right now
We are.
per year.
So repair and maintenance, we have been, Sean forecasted we'll spend about 990,000 next year just to continue current status quo. And then moving forward, it lessens a bit because we're fixing major problems now just to kind of, again, Band-Aid us through and get us by.
So lots of ways to look at this that need to go a little more slowly. We, in the case where you want to maybe add 60,000 square feet and you're saying it's going to cost you 50 to 60 million. Okay, so do you know where you're going to get that money?
I do not.
Okay, and 140 million, that's the same answer, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we know that if we are to build those things, we're gonna have to pay the full fare. What a private person can build with 140 million will cost us about 280 million to 350 million.
Mhm.
So when we look at this, we don't have 140 million, which would be probably the ideal solution. However, if we do something like have somebody build us a courthouse and we lease it, it's going to cost them 70 million. That leaves us 70 million to play with that we do not owe. We will have a new courthouse and we will owe 70 million, which will be recovered by the person through the lease fees. But we're still ahead 70 million. That argument doesn't apply to adding an extension, but adding an extension, I'm like, how do you have court in session when the jackhammers are going and the trucks are beeping back and forth? It's just something that I don't think we'd be doing the right thing, although it's cheaper enough that it'd be worth seeing, but that would be a full fare 50 million versus a full fare of 70 million. And then if we sell the building, there is value there.
Mhm.
I think even if you rock bottom sell the building, you're still looking at it. I don't want to throw any numbers out in the public. And the thing that alarmed me earlier today was discussion that the thought of having a lease was actually dismissed by the committee. And I'm scratching my head and saying, how does that happen? And it ties in today to this because, you know, do we do plan A, plan B, or plan C?
Well, plan A would be status quo, you know, so that's not really tied into anything with Hall of Justice, your future.
No, I
state.
understand, but plan A doesn't stand alone. Plan A says you've chosen plan A over plan B and plan C. So I've got to put value on plan B and plan C.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll go back to your statement on discounting the lease. Now, again, that was utilizing the current mall campus. That was not considering any, you know, lease to, leasing a building that they build for us. I mean, that was not.
That
considered.
surprises me because we had talked about that quite some time ago, and that was a discussion that we couldn't have the court in the mall. That was said over a year ago,
Yes.
probably, maybe longer. Time flies.
It's not off the table. I mean, the steering committee hasn't made any recommendations or any decisions. We just met last Thursday. It wasn't pulled from the idea list. I would also add that, you know, I think when we got the steering committee together, it was just like, what are the needs? You know, what do we need? And the Hall of Justice really rose to the top because they have a lot of more considerable needs than other divisions, and they're represented pretty strong there. But
Look, we've been doing this exercise for a long time,
Mhm.
for well, as long as I've been in this chair, and it's always the same thing. We want to know their needs, but we get these soft, amorphous answers that are very hard to deal with. We don't know what they actually are.
Mhm.
We have to do a better job than just say they're going to tell us our needs. Like I asked Judge Basher to provide us what he wants for a courtroom.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you remember several years back, it was going to be, we're going to hire a consultant to tell us, and that was about 80,000 to tell us what we need in a courthouse. And I'm scratching my head and thinking, why? You're the judge. You know what you don't like about what you've got here.
Mhm.
There are courthouses all around the nation. All you got to do is pick one that you like, go ask them to hand you the blueprints, and we'll see what we can do with that. Anyhow,
Just a couple comments on the addition of 60. What we need to know also, that doesn't fix any of the issues that are in the current. So it's really, if you choose that option, it's really a bigger number, right?
yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the discussions I heard around the lease was it was triple net and that they'd only agreed to maintenance of the building and the equipment for five years.
Yes.
So it kind of gave a little sour taste. Well, now we're right back renting from somebody and we're taking care of all the stuff. So I think that's where a little bit of that came from.
Yeah, okay, I understand that. Everything though is negotiable.
Yeah,
And,
Yeah.
and when you've got a $70 million cushion there,
right.
you can probably do a reasonable job.
Yeah.
There's another thing, it's just a little bit of a diversion, but the mall right now is not attractive to anybody who wants to come to Cowlitz County and open up a business. They're gonna go to there and say, something's wrong here. I don't understand it. But if we were there as an anchor, lots of people would be advantaged. Or lots of entities would be advantaged. So there is some intangible there, but I'm perfectly happy to see some penciled in tangibles. So for the moment, I think we do plan A, but because even, do you know what it would cost to reduct everything in that building?
We do.
That's,
Mhm. That's part of the information we had, the Millig Company provide a couple weeks ago. They provided several, this one, if you remember.
don't remember, but.
Sorry, I have it again.
I
have
should
more copies.
apologize, not you.
That we did have some estimates on potential options of an entirely new HVAC system, which is where we got a lot of the numbers that we're utilizing, including current repair and maintain
On
numbers.
plan B and C?
Yep. Mhm.
And is it a believable plan?
I believe so, yes. I wouldn't present it otherwise.
So how are they gonna handle the hot side versus the cold side of the building?
They're actually going to have independent thermometers, or help me out here. Go ahead, Will.
Yeah, so I can expand on that a little bit. What it is it's a variable speed system, and it's a cassette. That's what it's called. It's a cassette in the ceiling. I think that's the word that you were looking for. It's almost like its own independent heating system. So if you wanted your office a little warmer and Dennis wanted his office a little bit colder, there's some variable speed inside each independent cassette that allows more or less air to come through. I have hot and cold spots in that building everywhere we've noticed on each tour. And I don't know why. I can't explain that. Also to expand on that, this is completely replacing the heating and cooling system. We are working with a 52-year-old boiler that would need replaced sometime in the very near future. And also identified in the engineering report, we are working on a one motor large air handler for that system as well, which is a single point of failure. So that was identified in the issue as well. This plan to replace it would also mitigate that.
Yeah, one of the reasons still I would be a little suspicious. I could be off the base, but when you're trying to push air through Plena, it's going to depend on how the result's going to be a function of the pressure changes going through there. I turn my thing on and all of a sudden he gets hot or cold. That's not uncommon. And it costs a bloody fortune to make sure that you don't end up with that, which is sort of what the problem we have. We have a 52-year-old boiler. And by the way, you're young. 52 is not so old, but that's a different issue.
And another issue with that system, this would resolve is we're running on pneumatics, which is, we're running on this building with pneumatic thermostats as well. There's air leaks all throughout the lines. The lines are through the walls. It's almost impossible to identify which lines are leaking air. So this would also mitigate that. So it's just one of the many challenges that we have at that building.
Yeah, new stuff is gonna be far more maintainable, yeah.
Yeah.
How do you find a leak in an electrical circuit? You can do that with a TDR and it'll tell you that it's 50 feet from here.
So it's easier, I think, to go just 3 pages from the back of your booklet here, because the pages, unfortunately, they're not numbered. So 3 pages from the very back highlights what Millig, who is that design bid build company, came up with as potential solutions and options for us based off of their assessment of the Hall of Justice.
You've probably said this before. Who else have they done? I know they've done others.
Other like county buildings, Lewis County is one of their current projects, so they are
What's this
retrofitting.
one they're working on?
Yeah, so they're retrofitting their jail, which is attached to their court building right now. So you can see there's an orange box highlighting 1A through 1D, which is currently their options they gave us. Based off of the information and the research that we've done, we were looking towards the 1A option, which is an air source VRF heat pump system, which is where we penciled in these budget numbers for in that option B and C. And then
These
also,
These are different options, A, B, and C.
correct. So, okay, let me tie this back. I was really not trying to make this super confusing, so I apologize. Option A is,
Well, actually, maybe I'm going the wrong way. It's up to the chairman to decide if I'm out of order or not on that.
oh, no, that's fine. I'm trying to be less confusing and sometimes I struggle with that.
Okay,
So if you look at option A, we were using the 1D pricing. So they're saying, based off of what we've spent on average to repair and maintain, if you want to keep status quo, this is how much it costs. And then we factored that into proposal A.
Okay.
okay, so that's just projected cost over just maintenance for what we've
Correct.
got. Okay,
Correct.
Just as a side note, it's the Longview company that built the Lewis County's
Oh, I didn't
jail
know
that's
that.
attached, Gilnet Construction. You remember? He was a good friend of mine.
before my time.
Yeah.
I know Judge Basher also had and this is another interesting side fact, some historical drawings from the architect who did the Hall of Justice, who's also local. So he provided some of the architectural background of the Hall of Justice, which is kind of where that idea came from to add on, because back in the 70s, they designed it to be able to add on in the future. Now, whether or not those designs would pass current code is a question, but
Yeah.
so there's kind of just some side info as well. The architect was pretty local.
Yeah, I may be a little hasty. I think you've got to pencil in. That one seems more promising. I think you might be able to do construction and still run the courts. I don't think you can do an upper floor and
No,
do that.
We would agree with that. We don't think that's possible either.
Oh, okay. So whatever pencils in.
It's, whatever we do is a huge bill, and I'll be real honest with you. I don't know if the voters would, on a total new construction, didn't we estimate 7 to 10 mil a year on that, Kathy?
Closer to 10
Yeah.
or more in future dollars.
Yeah, we effectively gonna end up paying that. We couldn't go and get the bond ourselves because then we would be paying the full fare of 140. It's
Right.
like the other people have to go out there, put their neck in the noose, and they won't do that for free, and they shouldn't do it for free.
Yeah.
I got some numbers from them, just as for the mall, and it was not unreasonable. It was, I think, under $1.50 a square foot per month. But on top of that, you've got the common area fees and who knows what adds up after a while. We would do our own internal maintenance, but that doesn't solve the Hall of Justice thing. That's why that's the one we really should solve.
Mhm.
But what you're looking for direction from us is status quo, or we put some improvements and try and
That's correct.
improve the quality of life over there type thing.
Right. I mean, so, either way, we're spending next year, about 900,000 to $1 million. Whether the board, as far as budget, for budget reasons, if we set aside for 2024, $1 million, that would still satisfy if we want to stay status quo, or if we want to look at potentially doing these HVAC updates at the Hall of Justice. So I guess what I'm saying is we could kind of punt this a little bit. Again, I feel like it's premature to come from a facilities needs steering committee angle and say, this is what we should do. Like I said, we had to make some assumptions in these proposals, assuming certain things, staying there for at least a couple of years, et cetera. So, if what, this would be an option to at least budget for next year, the repair and maintenance of the 990,000 up to $1 million. And then, let the board make a more informed decision on what direction you guys want to go moving forward. Because either way, next year, it sounds like it's going to be $1 million no matter what option you choose.
So is that saying you're advocating Plan A in this sheet?
I actually came in today wanting to propose Plan B, which would assume a new HVAC system at the Hall of Justice. I would also, again, making assumptions that we would stay there for at least the next 3 to 5 years.
And when we say we expect to stay there for the next 3 to 5 years, even if we look at a new facility with the engineering, design, and construction years to get that building into shape, built out, furnished, and ready for a transition, we expect that period of time to be at least 3 to 5 years.
The private sector will build it much faster.
Absolutely. And much cheaper. I don't disagree on that front at all. I still think we have options out there. I still think we're pausing from a facilities, again, committee standpoint on, possible funding options. Commissioner Dahl had mentioned that at our last meeting, that there's still, maybe some other funding sources out there that we could explore. So I don't want to put the cart before the horse on that. I don't want to make any recommendations from that point of view. Like I said, I was coming here to propose Plan B for the reasons that I mentioned.
The Plan B is that 1C on that page 3,
That it would
From
be
the back.
1A,
1A.
air source VRF with heat pump option.
Okay, because I think the only use, well, yeah, they're all good. They're all solutions. The best one is going to be just coincidentally the more expensive one, the distributed ground source heat pumps. Because your environment in that building is very different depending on where you're standing, what floor you're on.
Yeah, and that actually provides the most cost reduction out of all the options on that last column over the utility cost reduction.
Oh,
Your
1C?
recommendation, 1C, yes.
They're estimating savings of 77.9
Mhm,
in energy costs.
correct, energy cost.
Oh, there we
savings.
go. Yeah, I'm
Yes.
sorry. I'm blind.
So on any of these, let's just say we said 1C, I'm just throwing out an example, and then down the road, we decide, hey, we can add an additional remodel. Does any of this have to be tore out?
No, all the mechanicals for any addition would be just for the additional area.
Mm.
So you don't you're not just spinning wheels here and then we gotta tear it out anyway if we go one route.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Well, unless the board wants to demolish the building.
Well, I guess
Well.
that's the alternative there, yeah.
Sorry. I mean, that's an option.
We'll let Commissioner Mortensen push the plunger.
Yeah.
I don't like destroying things. So I would not at all want to tear the building down.
And just one item I wanted to clarify on 1A, B, and C. There's no actual air moving through the vents. This is all coolant running through lines that are then just cooling or heating the air within that room itself. So we're not running air from the basement up to the third or second or first floor. It's coolant that's then being either cooling or heating the area that needs that heat or cooling.
That's on this page.
For B and C, yes, sir.
Yeah. Because that's very different than the EEM 1C solution,
So that would still be a heat pump solution. So
multiple heat pumps.
yes, sir. Many heat pumps in there. And that would circulate a coolant through the building that would go into the cassettes within each office. At that point, the cassette could pick either heating or cooling. There's no air moving through the vents
Yeah.
except makeup air to keep fresh air in the building.
It's just kind of like an on-demand water system, like
Yeah,
it doesn't heat it in the tank and then push it out. It takes the water to the,
I would describe it as a very large mini split system.
yeah, okay.
I want to be the first one in the line. Right?
Well, if the units are in individual offices, when it gets to the unit, then it decides how hot or cold it's gonna
Right,
push the air is what I'm hearing.
right. Based off the thermostat.
It's not pushing a bunch of air from the basement and the first office is good and the second one is not so good.
Correct. So
But-
there's no air moving through the pipes at all. It's
But
all-
you'll have a common, a common Freon, whatever it is you're doing.
So
but-
yeah, it's a trunk and branch approach.
Right, trunk and branch, fine.
Okay,
Did I ever tell you about the trunk and branch in Chennai, India?
no,
We lived about 6 houses off. And a nominal 220 or 240 would be around 180 at our place.
so you wanted to be first in line?
You want to be first in line?
So I take it that three different options abandon the geothermal mechanism that's across the street.
That's correct. We did ask Millig to take a look at that and the functionality. Will, do you want to kind of explain their feedback on that? They essentially said if we wanted to use it, I think we'd have to put some significant amount of money into it to utilize it. It wasn't the most energy efficient of our options for what we'd spend. So I don't know if you have anything else to add. Okay.
I-
Still there.
I didn't follow that, sorry.
Okay.
So the system was designed originally for a thermal heating and cooling system in that and it's all in the empty lot across the street, right?
Yes.
So they were drawing power and cooling it off.
Hmm.
But my assumption is it was pretty technical and the experts didn't do the job to keep it maintained. So it's filled up with junk that interferes. I'm guessing, I don't know, it doesn't seem to be working very successfully now. Which is why I asked if there was any hope for,
Yeah,
so we could sell that lot and make some money to pay for the repairs, right?
Right.
Well,
Or
let's not say that S word yet.
or utilize that really valuable flat, city parcel for potential parking or, expansion of the hall or, if we could utilize it or sell it. Are you following?
Yeah, are you thinking we will use the geothermal system?
No, we will not. We were saying if we abandon it, which would be what we would do in any of these proposals, we could utilize that space for other things. Because right now we cannot utilize it at all because of the geothermal stuff in there, in that area. Wells, thank you.
Yeah, I'd have to understand a little more. I've never gotten blueprints or whatever it is, but I know we didn't hold the contractor to the terms.
That's my understanding. That was
Yeah.
before, I think I started at the county.
Because do we know, I don't want to take your time up on that, but there is something interesting there.
But my impression has been the deferred maintenance program adopted years ago. Pretty much ignored doing anything with that. And it's just gotten worse and worse ever since.
But it didn't work from the first day, I'm told.
I don't believe it did function correctly.
And I would have really seriously challenged the assumptions. Like, do you have any idea how deep the pipes are and what goes through there?
Not off the top of my head.
What-
To give you a little bit background, and reading through some of the folders, I think you are correct. I don't think it's ever worked as it was supposed to. There was an issue of water draining into the river. Then you couldn't do that, per code. So then they changed the wells. They couldn't get to some sort of a depth. That's my recollection, but it never made it to the full design plans. I don't think it ever worked how it was intended to.
Will, what year was that installed?
70s. No. When was the courthouse, when was the courthouse built? That's when they started it.
No, it was an energy incentive, but they put that in to save money in the same year that happened, PUD raised the rates. To make the money. It literally was a wash. I think finished 2011, 2012.
Finished 2011, 2012.
A wrong junker question.
Yeah.
So you need some direction from us.
Well,
don't you?
you know, we do. But again, I think there's some compromise there in, you know, maybe if the board can allow us to at least allocate the 990 to $1 million, which again would just allow for repair and maintenance if that's the direction, or have some, I'll call it seed money, to move forward with HVAC purchase. I think that's really all Kathy needs to prepare a budget, for the next year, next 2 years, and we could always come back and we can give a full presentation on this Millig study. We didn't get an opportunity to do that a couple weeks ago. But I mean, I don't want to make any hasty decisions or request, you know, a significant amount of funds from the board if there's still, you know, a lot of questions about directions. So
So the more we spend next year in the budget, the less we can do for other things.
absolutely, that's correct. Yes.
At this point, are you looking for us, like the $900,000 for the electrical panels? That's just something you're gonna do regardless.
That is something that I do believe we need to do and move forward on next year, really as soon as possible. I do believe it's a health and safety issue. I can expand on
Yeah,
that.
I hear a lot of complaints because everybody plugs in their heater, right?
This actually extends beyond that. These panels were the Federal Pacific panels that were installed when the building was first.
Oh, yeah, I
Okay.
understand that. I'm just
Yep,
saying,
that's
in
it.
addition, you've got to get better power distribution within the building.
That's correct. Although, Will, do you want to expand on that proposal to all the 900,000 and what that includes, or we can provide that? We can
We
provide
can
that as
provide
well.
that. Yeah, but on the panel that needs, it's the main transfer switches that come into the building from the 3 legs from the PUD. Those Federal Pacific panels and electrical distribution are known for not turning the transfer switch. That's one of the known issues that they have. If you remember last year, I think we had 3 or 4 power outages. One time it shut down the courts. PUD had lost a leg, which then our system wouldn't transfer. We had to have electricians come in. This is another one of the hazards that would mitigate that.
So you're recommending B.
That would be my recommendation. However, again, to me, option A would still allow for us to set money aside and come back to the board with, with different.
We're gonna do that anyway.
That's what, yes, the money will be there anyway. So between option A and B, we'll at least have some funding, but if the board decides to go with status quo, we would just, come back and do a different presentation to see if we want to do some different choices. I don't know if Sean has anything else to add.
So on option B, you actually see no dollar figures in 2024
On line 31.
on line 31. That's correct. Because we would be using some sort of debt mechanism. And so we wouldn't start the repayments until 25 and forward. And that's why that's estimated there, like a locals program or something through the state that has an advantageous interest rate program.
So you're thinking we go out for bond issue?
Not bond, a debt function of some sort through the state because of the value. It wouldn't make probably fiscal sense to go out for a bond. We utilize one of the state programs instead,
Mhm.
similar to what we did for the morgue.
Will they do that at a fixed interest rate?
I believe so.
So one nice thing about the bonds, you at least can predict your future.
Yeah.
And I think the last locals program went out about 3.5%. So it's still fairly reasonable.
Well, I'm okay with B.
This
I'm
is
okay
what we
with, I'm
call,
okay with B.
this is where we call for a do-over on the Hall of Justice.
Yeah.
I don't have grounds to argue either way, so if
Okay.
you guys think B, I'm okay.
Yeah, I think reality is we're probably gonna be in there a while and we start making, if you can, I would assume you would go out and if they're retrofitting Lewis County, go around and make sure that it's working like they say it can do, or whatever county they've done. I mean, just verifying some of their claims. I don't have a reason to doubt them. I don't know them, but it's just good business sense, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this isn't signing any obviously you know that, but this isn't agreeing to, millage specifically. So we would be more than happy to.
At this point, we're trying to decide how we're gonna put it in the budget and how to
Correct.
move forward.
Yep.
So I think what you're hearing, Kathy, is try and build your budget around B and we'll go from there.
So this.
Changes can always be made.
So this
yeah.
ended up being our promised last budget workshop, right?
Quick.
She's
question.
catching on.
Yeah.
Plan B uses the cassettes.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Okay,
does that help?
that helps a lot. Thank you. Thank you.
Aren't you glad you were prepared?
Oh, I didn't catch that, sorry.
Aren't you glad you were prepared?
Yeah, all over the place prepared, but prepared nonetheless.
Well, I hope we just don't get anybody complaining because everybody has music now in their office space. We're installing cassettes, right?
Do they have Bluetooth capability?
Did I just date myself?
When you get people comfortable, all of a sudden things aren't as bad.
That's true.
Did we have any other?
We have a miscellaneous.
Unless you guys have, I don't,
Yeah, I've got,
Okay.
I just want to, both, you are planning to go to DC
yes,
to view, okay, so
yeah.
we need something the public sees that we approve or did not approve. it.
I haven't seen the registration yet.
Just opened last week.
Yeah, so I'll take a look at that, but my main I know they have a function and that's fine, but my main purpose is I want to spend some time with our David Hodges. And learn some of the contacts, and that's the same goal I'd have for Kelly, because she'll be around here longer than all of us. Yeah. So I haven't picked out quite, I know it's over their weekend, but I don't know if an extra day on the front or an extra day on the back.
Well, you know, we need 3 months notification, don't we, Dennis?
Yeah. I don't blame you.
Really?
Okay. With that, we'll adjourn. Thanks for participating.